Hey everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ and Friends. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and my guest today is one of the fabulous doctors at the TrueNorth Health Center in Santa Rosa, California. Her name is Dr. Csilla Veress, and she's going to be talking a little bit about hormones and menopause and can a plant-based diet help with some of the symptoms people, well, I guess it would be women, have when they go through menopause or perimenopause or postmenopause. Please welcome Dr. Veress. It's so good to see you again.
It's so great to see you always, definitely. And I love your hat.
Well, thank you. Pink, I'm told pink is my color. So yeah, it
Your
is. I do love the bling. That's why I like Vegas. I love bling. Don't ask me why. I'm not a girly girl, but I do love things that are shiny.
You know what I saw on Facebook the other day was that the Johnny, or is it Jimmy Carlson or Johnny Carlson episode? I don't know those nighttime shows, but the one that you did the handstand and you showed
Oh,
you
yeah.
right
Johnny Carson,
underwear.
Joey. Yeah.
I was like, she's never changed. I'm like, she loves those colors. I love it.
I do. I love the rainbow. I do. I love the rainbow. So, Dr. Goldhammer has asked you to be on the show in his spot. This is his normal slot, the second Wednesday of the month. We
Yes.
call it Hammer Your Way to Health, where he does a Q&A. Because he gets a lot of questions on female health and hormones. And he says, ask Dr. Varesh, ask Dr. Varesh. So finally, we have Dr. Varesh, so you can ask her all your questions. And are hormones something that just affect women as they age, or do they affect men too?
Oh, both men and women. Most of my lectures, I talk about something called andropause, which many men don't know about, many women don't know about, and it is a real thing where men go through very similar hormonal changes as they go through chronological aging, which affects them, affects their mood, it affects their libido, it affects their fatigue levels or their energy levels, it affects everything in their lives. So it's really an important part to understand it. I think there are sometimes men that don't know that, they do need to test for and watch for their estrogen levels, progesterone levels. I think many times we're like, oh, just testosterone. But I've had many men in my clinic and my practice that we're looking at the whole picture to see how we can optimize it. So yeah.
Nice, nice. Well, I know you've prepared, a short presentation for us that hopefully will spike some great questions from the conversation.
Yeah, actually it was a beautiful presentation that I where did you go? Because I need to share my screen. Oh, there you are. Where I presented to a women's group because they were interested in seeing a little bit about menopause. Can you see my screen?
Yep, menopause, a chapter revision.
Yeah. And so this is short, it's just a little setting the stage, a little different viewpoint on menopause in terms of what we can expect. Because I think a lot of people dread it. And a lot of people, when they're in it, they feel that they have no control over their bodies anymore. So I wanted to shift things for women out there so that they can have a new perspective on it. So one thing to think about, though, is that this is really divided into three distinct phases, and you can go through menopause for up to 10 years, or perimenopause into menopause. Menopause is defined as 1 year of no menstrual bleeding. The average age is 51. Anything under 45, we consider that early menopause, but you can go through it for years. So the one thing I hear a lot is women coming into my practice talking to me about perimenopausal symptoms where their doctors have unfortunately dismissed them, and given them maybe medications. For instance, I'm feeling low mood. I'm feeling a little bit more depressed. I'm feeling like I have a little bit more weight around the middle. I'm not able to do the things that I wanted to do or I've done in the past that have kept the weight off. Or I am finding it that my libido is dropping. I'm getting more vaginal dryness. I'm feeling more hungry all the time. I'm more irritated. I hear this, and unfortunately, a lot of the medical practices have gone into saying, I'm going to give you Prozac, or, you should eat less, work out more. And so I hear this from my women. And what I am noticing is that this is a collection of symptoms that could be already perimenopause, and we need to focus on the body as a whole. So what do we need to help support this innate healing in the body? And what maybe do we either have to remove in order for that to happen or add in? So that's how I look at it. And then postmenopausal is the period of time where there's complete stoppage of the menses. One thing I hope that your listeners, when they're tuning in, will kind of start to shift their mindset, is that instead of thinking it as like a problem, let's look at it as how can this be a gift? And the reason I say that is because when you go through indigenous cultures, you will see that this is a natural event occurring for several years where there's an opportunity for a conscious change to happen, and there's an increase in personal power that happens. So I'm sure a lot of women, if you're listening right now, you start to notice as you get older, and it's part of the wisdom, is that the things that maybe bothered you before don't bother you as much, right? You start to gain a little bit more of a voice. We start to take a stand, and we start to not let people maybe walk all over us anymore. And so it's a very powerful, powerful part. This is actually in a lot of other cultures, this is where we increase status in a family. We have greater freedom. We are recognized as having greater wisdom. It's only, unfortunately, in the society that we are living in today, where we're looking at this as like, oh no, we're going through menopause. It's like we're thinking about symptoms. We're thinking about a decline in health instead of kind of shifting that mindset. So just some things about hormonal therapy. There is a lot of, I would say, misinformation about it because of studies that have not really produced the results or have spoken about their results in an accurate manner. And so it's created a lot of fear for individuals, but I do think that it is very much a part of a treatment protocol or plan if a patient is safe to do so within the first 10 years of them either going into perimenopause or going into postmenopause. So I do think that it is something that can come on board, and it can be done in a really safe manner and a lot of benefits. One thing I will say, which I think I get this question more than anything else, is how should I go on hormone replacement therapy because I've gained a lot of weight around the middle? The number one reason for weight around the middle is not an estrogen or progesterone problem. It is a stress and cortisol component. So one thing I want to make sure that people understand is that if that is your main and only maybe symptom, which is possible if you're a whole food plant-based eater, and we'll talk more about that, then it's more likely cortisol that's driving some of that visceral fat deposition. When you look at, and the reason I know that some people who are reading this slide because they're listening to you, they're going to be like, oh my God, she has fish on here and meat. And the only reason I do that is because in my practice, some of you might know this if you follow me, I really try to meet my patients with where they're at. Not everybody is 100% ready to do whole food, plant-based, salt, sugar, oil-free. And so when I speak to women, and when I speak to women around the United States, which I do give a lot of lectures, I really want to empower women in terms of if they are, let's say, not going to be whole food plant-based, what can we do in order to structure their nutritional plan a little bit moving forward? So that is why here you'll see that for people who might not be ready for that, if you're going to do, I'd love people to move into whole food plant-based 100% or as much as we possibly can. But if you're going to do, let's say, meat or fish, make sure in this day and world, you have to make sure it is very, very clean. You have to make sure even that you know where you're getting it from, the farm that you're getting it from the ranch you're getting it from. This is how I really talk to my patients. High fiber foods, they not only are amazing for the microbiome, but they are going to help you move your bowels. They're going to help with heart disease. Antioxidants from that plant-rich foods will absolutely make a huge difference. And then I do recommend soy for some of my patients that are tolerant of soy for 1 to 2 times a week, which has been shown to be helpful because of the phytoestrogens. There are also other beautiful genistein, isoflavonoids. I mean, there's so many things that we can find not only in soy, but also other beans. And there's a lot of benefits, not only in the prevention of osteoporosis, reduction in cholesterol, reduction in hot flashes. So food can be your medicine is the main kind of aspect of this. The other things that are going to support you is regular sexual activity. There are studies that show that the more you engage in intimacy and the more that you have really strong relationships with your partners in this sense, and if you're not, maybe talking to your partner regarding this, it definitely helps with not only moving energy in the body, but also keeping things more lubricated. So a lot of people unfortunately won't have a lot of sex because of vaginal dryness or maybe vaginal atrophy, which means that the tissue is a little bit more frail. One of the factors that can go into that too is just the lack of sexual activity. So it's something that I do coach my patients about. I'm actually in a very powerful program right now to teach people about the power and the impact that orgasms can have, and how that's a huge part of our health. And I know that this is kind of not really talked about, but it has to be talked about because it's one of our best ways to also bring the body into a really deep state of parasympathetic. It can help with trauma. So there's a lot of kind of research around that. And then counseling and emotional support. This is, again, a lot of women go through this, unfortunately, and they have the impact of stress. They're taking care of sick, parents, or they're taking care of still maybe kids as they're going through that. This is a really big time to kind of bring in emotional support. I can't express reducing alcohol for those of you who maybe still are drinking or drinking maybe regularly at dinners. Reducing alcohol is a really big component of helping not only with symptoms, but also improving health down the road. Reframing like the belief about this and embracing the change. So even like with pain, I always say, is this something that we can, surf? Is this like something that we can move through it? The more you resist something, the more something persists, right? So a lot of times, if we can just reframe this period of time, people tend to do a lot better, especially with hot flashes. Can we surf these hot flashes? And then doing some of the support measures around it. Consistent exercise. I do not love people pushing themselves with exercise. This is more of like moderate activity. Sometimes you can put in there definitely yoga for that added support. Sometimes you can put in some intensity for some people. Definitely helps with osteoporosis as well if we're putting that weight bearing type of exercises. And then, taking time to reflect. This is a time when people's objectives change. So looking at what do you want to do with your life? Do you want to go into retirement? Your kids have left, maybe if you've had kids, redefining how you want your life to go. And that is a very powerful thing as well. Some of the most common symptoms that we see are hot flashes, insomnia, fatigue, heart palpitations, depression, anxiety, incontinence, memory issues, thinning of the hair. All of these can definitely be impacted, and we can reduce the intensity of them through lifestyle, through nutrition, medicine. And so I've seen a lot of people go through this transition with a lot more ease, basically. So, and then there's a lot of herbs we can use. So for those individuals that don't want to move into hormone replacement therapy, they're just not interested in it. That's something that we can definitely work on with different types of herbs. I won't go through the entire list, but just so you can understand that nature has given us an amazing array of different phytonutrients, chemicals, and plants that have been able to help us through the darkest, this transition, darkest times as well in our past, but also through different transitions in our life. Some of the things I would say if I had to take one of those symptoms that is the most common, it would be hot flashes and night sweating for women. And so these are some of the key components that I, work with women about, is like getting into really deep relaxation with breathing, changing out clothing, not only just for hot flashes, but also the health. So reducing toxicant load, so wearing more cotton, maybe more linen, some of the light woolen kind of knits, avoiding spicy food, so anything that's going to drive up that heat that we see, even if you look at traditional Chinese medicine or Ayurvedic medicine, fans, a little spray bottle to help. Again, alcohol, keeping that as a minimum. bringing in those phytoestrogens like the soy and the legumes, that can be really helpful as well. So those are just some really basic ones. I know it was a quick one. It's just more to set the stage for what are some of the supports that we have. And then it says click the end to exit. Here we go. So.
All right, thank you. Well, that brings up many questions. First of all, 10 years is a long time for people to suffer if they are suffering.
Yes. Yep. That is the point, right? Is the fact that people don't have to suffer for that long. But yes.
Wow. Well, you said something called andropause. Is that similar to testopause?
It is. Well, kind of actually. So andropause is similar to menopause. So andropause is a period of time in a men's life when we start to see testosterone changes pretty significantly. So testosterone works in kind of these diurnal patterns within men, and it increases and decreases throughout the day and throughout life cycles. And so it absolutely can become more of an issue as men start to chronologically age. So.
Thank you. Well, there are so many questions that I'm seeing in
Yay!
chat on Instagram and on Facebook and on YouTube. So I'll just go through them one at a time. I was worried we wouldn't have any questions, but we have so many. So Mary says, I had breast cancer hormone receptive. What can I do for extreme low libido?
Mm, great question. So there's a lot of things that you can do. Number one is and I know some of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about, because many people don't talk about it, might sound a little racy, and it might sound a little bit what's the word I'm looking for? Just new. Let's put it that way. It might sound a little bit new, but I invite you to keep an open mind, and I invite you to kind of reach out to me if you need any more support on it. But with low libido, there's a couple of factors to it. So one is there can be hormonal support that you can do even in a more natural sense. So there are different types of herbs like for instance, like ginseng is a really beautiful one that actually helps activate libido. Sometimes women's libido are low, believe it or not, because they're nutritional deficient. And I know that somebody out there in your group is probably saying, "Well, I'm eating whole food plant-based. There's no way I can be nutritionally deficient." Well, that's not true. You can be still eating whole food plant-based and still not getting all the nutritional needs that your body particular needs, or there could be a deficiency because of chronic illness, because of inflammation in the body. So I invite you to check with your doctor. There is really great tests, like NutriValve is one of them, that looks at understanding, are there any are there any nutrients that your body might need? So that's another component. The other thing is that men and women are a little different in how we get stimulated. And so the reality of it is that a lot of times our libido is activated when we are emotionally kind of connected with another human. So I invite you to check in and see how your relationship is. So, and be really honest, like, how is it going? Like, are you having really deep and hard conversations with your partner? Have you been able to set date nights and situations where you're able to come together as a beautiful unit and be able to spend time and make plans on it? And the other thing is too, is that, women, we need a little bit more work sometimes. There's different, if you look at the anatomy and the hormonal, the neurochemical kind of releases for women, there are different women that function differently in terms of how much like pregame we need in terms of sex and to feel activated for sex. And so I invite you to explore that. I know this is the racy part about it, but I do, invite you to explore your body. How do you feel about, looking at yourself naked, right? Have you been able to touch yourself, like in terms of also allowing yourself to be pleasured? It's one of those topic of conversations I don't hear people talking about, but it's so important when we talk about libido, because if you're feeling like when you're with your partner and you're hating on your body, it is going to be very hard for you to have that activation. So these are some components, and also telling your partner with what you like. It might take maybe 20 to 30 minutes before having sex where you start to feel more of that libido come on. I think in our society, this is the last thing I'm going to say about it. I think in our society, we think that we see our partner and we should be just like, oh my God, the juices are flowing. This is amazing. I want you. And it's going to happen that way. It's not like that. It's really, and over time, when you're with someone, if we're not really making time for it and doing active support around engaging in these sexual activities, it will definitely go and become less or need more support down the road. So those are some things that I would kind of start with, and then you might need a little bit more support, which I would be happy if you want to make an appointment and we can go deeper with that. So
Yeah, but it's not like that in the movies.
I know that's the problem, right? Is the movies, they kind of give this overview where, you know, you can be, well, and to be fair, I have a friend who's in her 80s and she just got a new partner, and this is the newness, right? They're having sex all the time. So, you know, it's like you can have sex and you can have that beautiful, you know, expression for later in your life. It's just that it's one of those things that I think we think is going to be automatic, but it's just like anything else. It's going to take time, and it really takes you paying attention to it.
I don't think I've ever heard Dr. Goldhammer talking about sex other than you're not supposed to do it while you're water fasting.
Maybe we should start asking him more about like
Ah, that's so funny. That would be fun. So, Art Music is asking, how do you feel about starting hormone replacement for the first time, having some moderate symptoms?
um
She's 62, by the way, if that makes a difference.
yeah. So this is what I would say to you is that I would really discuss into details with your doctor whether or not hormone replacement therapy is appropriate for you specifically. What I will pull back and I will give you a more generalization about is the fact that hormone replacement therapy can happen even with perimenopause. So meaning somebody, it doesn't have to be in menopause to start it, because they have so many symptoms. Even if you have just a moderate amount of symptoms, but it is really causing quite a bit of impact in your quality of life, I am somebody that is for it if it's safe for you. That's why I say, please talk to your doctor about it. The other quick and really important point is that if you are 10 years from your last menstrual period, it is more dangerous for you to now go on hormone replacement therapy. So there is a window of time that hormone replacement therapy is safe because our receptors are still online. Our body are still moving in that direction where it can accept that replacement therapy. After 10 years, it does get to a point where studies are showing that it can be dangerous. So if you're still in that window, if there's not a great, if you haven't had breast cancer in the past, if you haven't had, a really significant history with breast cancer or any kind of hormone dependent cancers, if it's specifically, safe for you, then I'm okay with doing it, even if you have a couple of symptoms. So.
Okay, thank you. That's interesting what you said about you have to do it soon if you're going to do it. So there's a question from Jacqueline. I believe there is research stating that vegan women are more prone to osteoporosis.
I have not, well, actually, let me say this. I have not seen whole food plant-based lifestyles be more prone to osteoporosis. I will tell you that there probably could be truth to if we're talking vegan, and maybe we're talking also just junk food vegan, we can all, I think, see how that might be the problem and that could be a concern. The reason I say that is because of the fact that when you look at most studies that have a very negative overview of whole food plant-based, it's because they're looking at vegan lifestyles. They're not looking at whole food plant-based lifestyles. And why I say that is because Twizzlers are vegan. There is a lot of candy that's vegan. There is a lot of processed meats, right? Or fake meats. There's processed cheeses or fake cheeses, right? That are out there in the world. And you can be vegan and be actually more unhealthy than somebody who's ketogenic or whatever, well, not carnivore, I wouldn't say that, but like my point with that is that if somebody is more vegan and they're eating just processed food, then yes, you absolutely can be driving the body more towards risk for osteoporosis because there's more acidity, right? There is not as much nutritional profile there. There is more salt probably in the system, right? Those people are maybe, doing lots of coffees, maybe more alcohol, maybe higher stress levels. So there are some factors there that I think contribute to it. And veganism, as a junk food vegan, you are still driving inflammation, which then drives more higher risk for osteoporosis. If you're whole food plant-based, that is the diet that has been studied to show actually prevention of osteoporosis, because even meat products, what you have to understand about that is that when you're getting meat products into the diet, unfortunately, you're getting more antibiotics. You are getting more hormone many times because those animals are pumped full of hormones, which is disrupting our own hormonal cycling or hormonal balancing. You have toxicants, which I know Goldhammer talks about all the time. You bioaccumulate these toxins, which will absolutely affect your bone density, flexibility, things of that nature. So that is also why, as you move into whole food plant-based in a really healthy kind of balanced way, you actually are preventing osteoporosis. So I hope that helps to kind of pull that apart.
Great, thank you. Okay, we have another question from, okay, here it is. How come soy only twice a week? Is it okay to have it every day? Is it okay for men too? Is it contraindicated in prostate cancer?
It is not contraindicated in prostate cancer. I do not like people having soy every day. And that is just because most soy, unless you're having edamame, well, let me back up for 2 seconds. I really value variety in a whole food plant-based diet because that is the best way that you are going to get optimization of nutrients, of health, of microbiome, balance, across the board. If you want the greatest health, you cannot be eating the same food every single day. I'm okay with people obviously making batch cooking and having leftovers for a night or two, but your objective would be important to be that you're trying to get some different foods across the board throughout the week, throughout the month. So that's number one. So I don't love people having the same thing every single day. I would not recommend somebody doing soy every single day. The reason is because if you are doing edamame, maybe there's a little bit more, there's more benefit, less risk, but most of these foods, like let's say soy milk, let's say tofu, let's say tempeh, right? Natto, all of these, they're processed. To get from a edamame bean in order to get to tofu, can you do it in your kitchen? For sure. It just takes a lot of processing. So I would rather people do more whole food, which is going to be first and foremost one of your best measures for health or best step forward towards health. So if you want to bring food like soy in, I'm okay with that. I just prefer it to be 2 to 3 times a week. And then I forget the other question. I think there was a second question. So it's safe for men too. So men can do it, but I also recommend it only like 2 to 3 times a week for them as well. So
Great, thank you.
yeah.
All right. So you kind of touched on this, but this question came in before you started talking about it. Renee said, good to see you. I take vaginal estradiol 10 milligrams and was wondering what you think about that.
I would say anything that you take cream, while it is absorbed, it is less absorbed than pills or patches, right? And so I'm okay with it if your doctor and you have come to the decision that it is, an appropriate and safe measure for you. Just note as well that estradiol used as a vaginal application, it's going to be most specifically helpful for vaginal dryness and atrophy. I do not tend to see it as much impact with like fatigue or mood balancing and things like that. While it can, it's just that usually if we're looking at other factors of symptoms, you many times have to move into something just at a higher dose, like a patch or a pill, things like that.
But is it different when you're taking it, locally like that versus a pill?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You're going to just have a greater impact. And when you get it more systemically, like you do with a pill or a patch, you just, like I said, you're going to impact a larger grouping of symptoms than like locally, where it's really designed more for vaginal dryness and atrophy.
Great, thank you. Okay, so Bluegrass Girl would like to know. She says, I've been plant-based for over 5 years and still starting gaining a lot of weight once perimenopause hit. Diet and exercise doesn't seem to make much difference. Any suggestions? Not GLP-1 question mark?
Yes. So like I mentioned in the lecture, weight around the middle, it is now been studied, and it is absolutely, we understand this to be truth. Weight around the middle does not have to do with the estrogen and progesterone changes. There is an impact there. I mean, you cannot separate out, some systems in your body, or you cannot separate out these beautiful hormones in the body. They have a lot of intertwining, but the majority of that weight gain as we go through perimenopause is cortisol. So one thing to understand is, as we chronologically age, you cannot go against this, because this is just laws of physics in our bodies. Men and women will have an increase in cortisol throughout their lifetime, right? As we are going through this andropause or this menopausal period. So that's one thing. The other thing is, nowadays, right? Unfortunately, or fortunately, I wouldn't say unfortunately, fortunately, the unfortunate part is how much stress we put on ourselves as women. The fortunate part is that during this phase now, right, a lot of us are at the height of our careers, right? We are now in careers. We are out there, we're CEOs of companies. We're doing a lot, even if you're not in business, even if you don't own your own business, or you're working with somebody else in their business. There's so much that we now do in life, we've always done, but we have this extra load on us where we're probably taking care of our, our parents, where we're, like I said, not only that we're in these families and we're expected to be, like the kind of the head of the household, we are also now working many times as well. So the increase in cortisol that naturally happens is compounded by the stress in our lives as well. And so that is a lot of times what drives that weight around the middle. I would recommend that you look at that piece and find ways that you can naturally bring those stressors down. So that might be saying no to certain things in your life. That might be carving out at least one day a week where you do nothing, right? That might be doing breath work. That might be doing meditation, whatever feels right or good for you in terms of really helping manage stress and maybe the stress you put on yourself. The other piece that I see is that I see women trying to do too much with their exercise. So these are women that will go into HIIT almost every single day, or they'll go into CrossFit, or they'll do, what is that other place? Orange Theory. That might be too much intensity for this transition in your life. Like for women who are going through menopause, I'd rather you go for beautiful hikes and walking and yoga, things of that nature. So that might help you with your cortisol. And then if that doesn't work, then a lot of times we can do some cortisol managing herbs that can be supportive there.
Perfect. Yeah, because you mentioned that belly fat especially wasn't just related to the diet and exercise, stress and cortisol and all those kind of things. So we don't know what the stress and stuff is like in her life or sleep, etc. Thanks. Angela.
And also, I will say, can I just say, just so
Sure.
you know, that the visceral fat, remember, it has receptors for cortisol. So like when they've done studies, there's a lot of really good information that we understand now that cortisol does drive that visceral fat load. So
Right. Yeah, I've seen that even on commercials for supplements.
yeah.
Yeah. So it must be true. No, just kidding.
I know.
Angela says, I have had easy menstrual cycles ever since I went vegan. Does that mean that I'll have a smooth menopausal transition also?
It could be. Yeah, it definitely could be. It's really hard to predict that. I have had a lot of women that have had easy menses and they coast into menopause beautifully. I've also had women who have had a lot of stress that during their, phase of transition and they have a little bit more struggle. But the fact that you are whole food plant-based right there, frontline center will allow you to transition probably easier as well. So
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Where's this other question I just saw? Okay. Here we go. This is from Laura. Can you share anything about lichen sclerosis that apparently 3 out of 100 women suffer from?
I mean, I could share a lot. Well, I mean, is there anything specific? So what I'll start off with is that um it's similar to thinking about the terrain of the body, right? So this does not come up um, for no reason, right, in the person. And so what I invite you to look at is what are some factors outside of whole food plant-based? Because probably if you're here, you probably have already explored whole food plant-based. There's many other factors that we can look into. So number one is autoimmunity goes up, right, in women. And especially we start to see it around perimenopause and menopause. And that is probably due to the fact of hormonal shifts, right, that are happening. The other thing is the stress piece. I will keep coming back to it because not only does it increase weight, but it also around the middle, as we talked about, but there's also impact that stress has on, tumor necrosis factor alpha, right? IL-6, these are inflammatory cytokines. We know that it drives up inflammation. While in its adaptive phase where it saves your life, if it continues, it will absolutely be the thing that wears and tears down other hormonal systems, other systems in the body. And so a lot of my women who have lichen sclerosis, they have a good history with a lot of stress. I look at microbiome health. So your vulva, your vaginal health has a great deal to do with your microbiome health. So that's something I also look at. We have seen it doesn't cure it. So please don't think that you doing a water fast is going to be a cure-all, but water fasting does impact the health of the terrain of the body. So we have seen some cases where there's been a improvement in the lichen sclerosis, even in people who are whole food plant-based eaters. So water fasting is something to think about if you're safe. And obviously I would do it medically supervised, but.
Perfect. Thank you. Eleanor would like to know if you could please touch on diet in postpartum and breastfeeding. Is the higher fat from whole foods helpful? And if so, would that make weight loss not possible?
So there's two parts to that question. So one, let me see if I'm understanding it 100%. So just they want to know about whole food plant-based and postpartum, number one, correct?
Yeah, and
And
if a higher fat diet from whole foods is helpful during that period.
if it's high, oh, got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
and if so, if it is helpful or weight loss is how I'm interpreting the question.
Okay, got it. I'm sorry. Because you cut out also.
I'm
I'm not
sorry.
sure if
Okay.
everybody saw that, but I just wanted to make sure I understood the continuation of that question. So whole food plant-based is very impactful in postpartum for a number of reasons, but the most specific is I think many individuals probably now, just because everybody's talking about it, which is pretty awesome, you know, 80 to 90% of your serotonin is produced in your gut versus like in the brain. Why is that important? Well, when you start switching into more whole food plant-based, what you're going to see is you're going to see a lot of impact in the restoration and improvement in your microbiome, and it will affect how your neurochemicals, especially through vagal nerve kind of communication from the brain to the gut, can be improved. And so you do see generally individuals with anxiety or depression start to have mood impacts in a beneficial way when they're doing more whole food plant-based. They get rid of the salt, they get rid of the sugar, they get rid of the oil. They really start to transition to high phytonutrient, antioxidant rich foods. That does definitely help. And I think it's twofold. I think it's not only the impact that it has on that, kind of nervous system support, but also the impact that it has because you're getting the nutrients you need in order to produce these neurochemicals that will help kind of reduce that depressive, the low mood, the anxiety, all of that feeling of isolation, that feeling of instability, that helping with insomnia as well. So that's a big factor. I think the second part of the question is, would increasing fat be supportive? And you can definitely, in this time period, increase some of your fat in a healthy way. So nuts and seeds, high zinc quality. There's a lot of selenium, different nutrients that your body needs during this time. Also, having healthy fats like in avocados, doing more omega-3s is going to be very supportive as well, because it's going to switch that basically that oxidative load, and also the switch into more anti-inflammatory, especially when our omega-3 index is more balanced. So purslane, flax seeds, chia seeds, getting more of those types of nutritional loading can be very supportive, on a healthy hormonal system, but also on a healthy microbiome and inflammatory system as well. So those are really big factors. I think, and if can you tell me if I'm not hearing this correctly, Chef AJ? But so I think the question is also if you've gained weight, does whole food plant-based help with losing the weight? Is that the?
Well, I don't know, and I'm hoping the viewer can maybe clarify this. The way I'm interpreting it,
Yeah.
that maybe the viewer heard that increasing the amount of fat is helpful when you're breastfeeding, but maybe they're worried that it will impair their weight loss. That's how I read it.
Oh, I got it. Yeah,
I
yeah.
think
No,
I'm
I
not.
don't. Yeah, I do not think that it's going to impair your weight loss during this time, because remember, your energy requirement when you're breastfeeding is I don't know the exact numbers, but it is like double to triple, which is why most women will lose weight during this period of time. And I think when you're whole food plant-based, from my experience, most women have that weight loss be very not very easier than individuals that are eating more standard American diet.
But maybe it depends also how much fat as well, like possibly that
It
you.
depends on how much fat, and it depends on other factors. So it depends on, your stress level. It depends on sleep as well. It depends. I mean, there's many different factors, but I'm taking it as more of we're talking generalizations, and if we're talking generalizations, then I don't think that individual is going to have issues. So
Well, she now she's clarifying. She's saying, is higher fat helpful? But it doesn't say helpful for what, like for your baby, for you, and is fasting and weight loss safe? So I don't think you're going to fast if you're
you
breast.
don't, no. You do not want to fast you do not want to fast when you're pregnant, and you do not want to fast when you're breastfeeding. So those are two areas where you do not want to be fasting. You can still be intermittent fasting, meaning if you're doing a 12-hour overnight fast, I think that is still appropriate in this category as well. But fat can be helpful. It depends on where we started and where we're going from. It can also be too much, right? So I think if you're not having any fat in your diet, then having a little bit of fat, like I talked about with healthy avocados, flaxseed, chia seeds, can be very supportive for you. If you're already eating a good amount of fat, let's say 10 to 20% during this period of time, then you're probably in a really safe zone and a good zone. If you're upping it more to ketogenic kind of phases in a whole food plant-based, I'd be very careful, because many people, I think that getting someone who really understands high fat like that can be a supportive kind of tool in your toolbox if you're going to do that. I don't recommend it, but if that's something that you're going to think about, then you definitely need support on it. I see so many people trying to do high fat diets, and they do not do it appropriately or in a way that's supportive to them.
Great, thank you. Okay, this is okay. So Laura, you've submitted lots of questions, and the problem is they're really, really, really long. So in the future, we've got to have shorter questions so that we can get to everybody's questions. But I'll try to. Looks like I'm frozen. I think I'm back.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, okay, perfect. So Laura says she's 59. She's reduced sodium to TrueNorth standards because her 219 chemo-induced cramps were unbearable from tracking with chronometer. Okay, this is just, see, stuff like this, you guys sometimes have to consider a consult because these are real, where am I going? Really specific kind of medical stuff. I think her bottom line question is her goal is to improve her osteoporosis. Um, do you think she could build bone density and avoid cramps at a higher sodium intake of 800 to 1,000 milligrams?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you absolutely can. And there's the studies show that the impact on osteoporosis is in the high sodium diets of the standard American diet or standard Australian diet or standard UK diet, right? So if you are minimizing your sodium intakes, that's one of many different factors that increase osteoporotic, factors. So yeah, I think that you would still be safe. And then if you're still having cramps, the other thing that I would recommend or think about or talk to your doctor about is getting tested. Like, have you ever, if you haven't done like a Genova Nutraval test, get that done to see what other nutrients, like, are you deficient in magnesium? Do you need more magnesium? Like, you're worried about, sodium, but, how is your potassium levels? How are, what's your phosphorus doing? What's your chloride doing? Like, what do you need? How's your omega-3 to omega-6 balance? Like, I mean, there is so, that's a really deeper question where, like, there's just a lot more that can be involved in there, and sodium is just one aspect of it. But to just nail down, like, do I think that you can do it on that sodium level? Yes.
Great, thank you. Mary says, I've had ovarian torsion on a largely whole food plant-based diet. How can I prevent this from happening again? Is there any reasons my periods would be more painful during perimenopause?
Is there any reasons your menses are more painful during perimenopause just in general, or are you trying to tell me, is it connected to the ovarian torsion?
I don't
Okay.
know.
Okay.
Oh,
So
sorry.
so one thing I will say, just I'm going to pull this back and just make a more general statement on it, is that so ovarian torsion is a little bit different, and a lot of times while there's an inflammatory piece to it, there also can be more physical injury impact to it. So most likely, if you have switched into, or you said your whole food plant-based, there's probably some other factors that have gone into it. And again, I think all of your readers have heard this before, is the fact, or listeners have heard this before, is that, inflammation is not just from diet. It can be from stress. It can be from lack of sleep. It can be from work, it could be from toxicants. It can be from microbiome. I mean, there's just many different components of stress in the body. It could be whole food plant-based, but again, I'm going to bring this concept in. It can be the fact that you're not balancing out your omega-3s, omega-6s. So there's the point I'm just trying to make is there's many different factors that go into it. I would have to go deeper and understand all the factors that have led to what's going on for you. And I would say, if you're asking generally, do menstrual cycles become more painful in perimenopause? They don't have to. Can they? Absolutely. I mean, it's one of the menstrual cycle in a whole can be very affected by, your perimenopausal transition. So you can get more bleeding, you can get less bleeding, you can get more days of bleeding, you can get, you can get a shorter cycle. You can get more pain, you can get less pain, you can get more bloating, you can get less bloating. I mean, the point is that when you're transitioning, it can be very altered from your normal cycling. If that's the case, again, pull back and understand that food is very important, but it is not the only thing when we look at optimization of your health. It is not I will say this, and I hope that this kind of sets the stage. the majority of the patients that come to see me and I'm helping, they got whole food plant-based in the back. Like I'm not really working many people on whole food plant-based. And some people, as I mentioned, if I'm meeting patients with where they're at and I'm working with what they are able to do in their lifestyle in order to bring about health. But many times I'm working on getting them to sleep 7 to 9 hours. Many times, most of the time, which is why I'm writing a book on it, is like I am teaching people how to be very, very connected to their body so they understand the impact that stress has, right? And trying to like kind of, find ways where they can manage that. I work a lot with microbiome optimization. I look at total toxicant paneling. I look at oxidative stress. I look at how people are metabolizing their estrogen, right? Or how is your beta glucuronidase working? Like, is there an overproduction of bacteria that produces this enzyme? Like, there's many different factors that goes into that. So just to kind of make sure that people understand and see the whole picture.
Right. And you do private coaching. I'll get
Yeah.
the link to that and I'll put it in the chat in the show notes because sorry, Laura, like these questions, we just can't, if you can't say it in like 2, maybe 3 short sentences, we just can't ask them because that becomes more like a consult kind of thing. But there's a follow-up from Eleanor saying that it was that she heard that it is not safe to attempt weight loss while breastfeeding, but she has 100 pounds to lose and has struggled to shift it.
I would say this. There's a difference between, right, going into a weight loss program like if you're trying to do more aggressive like fasting or like the what are those called, like the Nutra systems or the Jenny Craigs of the world and stuff like that, where you're dropping down nutritional kind of component in order to lose weight. I would say that I don't recommend. If you're whole food plant-based, so if you're eating really good variety of nutrients, you're giving your child the necessary nutrients, phytonutrients, antioxidants that it needs, and also supporting your system. Plus, you probably will start to lose weight on that because of the energy load that requires versus also being on a really good balanced kind of nutritional plan. If you're not losing weight though, that's what I'm saying. There's probably something else going on. Like, if, there could be microbiome, imbalance, there could be toxicants, there could be some other factors that are causing you to struggle with your weight. And the only reason I say that is because these are the individuals I do see, the ones that are like, I am walking every day, right? I'm taking these beautiful hikes every day. I'm eating whole food plant-based. I'm still not losing weight. Why? And so that's when looking into what's your thyroid like, what are your hormones doing? Like, what is your microbiome? So all these factors.
Thank you. There's a question from I can't see the name, but it says, Aloha, they probably are from Hawaii. I'm post-menopause, but my vitamin D level is 30 milligrams per ml. Is this an optimal level for bone health?
So what I will say is that you're going to be in the normal category for most labs, but optimization for across the board for individuals should be 50 to 70 nanograms per milliliter. And that is optimal. So you should talk to your doctor, or please talk to your doctor about the proper dosing, for the majority of individuals that I see in my, and again, it's different, right? It depends on the brand you're taking for vitamin D. It depends on where you're living. Many people say, oh, I get out in the sun for 5 minutes. Well, most people, especially if you're like me, who's living in Santa Rosa, in California, our latitude is such that you would have to be out in the sun 15 to 20 minutes, no sunblock, for totally butt naked for that period, for 15 to 20 minutes. So every day, that is almost impossible. I've only seen one patient in my entire career that has adequate vitamin D levels without supplementation, and he was from Ecuador. And so he was just out there all day long, and where he is in terms of, the equator just was perfect for him. And the reason I say that is because many people think that they can just get it from the sun, and most people cannot. So please do talk to your doctor about boosting that a little bit.
Great. There's a question. What can we do about hair thinning? No medical cause was found. I'm not using any tools to damage my hair.
That is a really also pretty complex question. So, and when you say there's been no medical reason, I would have to go down that road because not that I don't trust you as the listener, it's just that I have seen people say that, you know, they have had hair thinning and the only thing that was tested for was, you know, thyroid basically. And so that is not necessarily all the different components that we can look at. I will say this just as a general kind of, again, viewpoint for this. Hormones impact hair, toxicants impact hair growth. So one of the things that I found just in my own personal journey, I moved to Redding, California, which is a little bit north, or I used to live in Santa Rosa, which is why, right, and I work in TrueNorth, right? So, but I moved to Redding, California. There's over 13 contaminants was in my water. And so I did a very basic water filtration system. When I found out, because I was talking to a neighbor, long story, I changed out my water filter. The minute I did that, my hair started to grow back. My hair was thinning quite a bit. So for me, it was more of a toxicant issue, right? For somebody, it could be actually a microbiome issue. For another person, it could be an inflammation issue, meaning that they are inflamed because they have, you know, pre-diabetes, they have high cholesterol, they have a lot of visceral fat around the middle, right? So the inflammation in their system is higher, which can cause more hair loss as well for certain individuals. Stress is a big factor that will cause hair loss. And then, and of course, like being in that postmenopausal phase can also cause hair loss. Depending upon what of those factors is the main driver. And I know that you said that there has been no medical reason, but I would say let's look at what they actually tested for. Would determine like what we would do for it. But a lot of times there's like some really great nutritional support out there too. So like Vitanica is a brand that has a really good like kind of hair kind of nutrient, you know, product out there as a general, which is vegan, you know, so you can do stuff like that. There is Glow, I think it's called Aloe Glow or Aloe Collagen, which is a vegan form, which has like aloe vera and some other really good nutrients. So there are nutrients you can take, but again, it depends on what's going on for your hair growth or hair
Great.
loss.
Thank you. And there's a question from Instagram. Can you suggest some natural ways to improve brain fog?
Um, so again, it depends on what causes the brain fog, but I would say some really basic kind of support measures is the fact that uh, if brain fog is due to nutrition, I would look at some of the main factors that goes into that, right? And that is excess alcohol, um, excess sugar in your diet, people who are not giving their time for their body to rest. So not giving 4 to 5 hours in between meals. So if you are a snacker, I would stop snacking. If you eat late at night, I would stop eating late at night and give yourself like a 12-hour window for a really good overnight fast. So those are some basic kind of nutritional supports. If you are a candidate, I would recommend. So, one of the greatest tools I have found, not surprising, right, for brain fog, is to do a cleanse. So, if you have the opportunity to come to True North, or if you've ever done even like a modified cleanse, try like a weekend where you're doing just salads, you know, try a weekend where you're doing just blended soups, try a weekend where if it's safe for you and you've talked to your doctor and you can do like, you know, maybe like throwing in there a couple of green juices, that can be very supportive for brain fog because sometimes it is a very specific inflammatory kind of cause, which can be altered with just some fasting tools or some dietary tools. If you're not moving your body, think about that as a component. So a lot of people who have brain fog have mitochondrial dysfunction, and it's because they're not moving their body. So even if you feel fatigued as well as brain fog, I would definitely go out there and do at least maybe 15 minutes, especially in the morning, getting that first morning light. Brain fog can be caused by lack of sleep. And if so, if you're not sleeping well, I would recommend really working on your sleep patterns. Can you set your nighttime sleep for you're going to bed every single night at 9 o'clock, at least for 1 week? Make sure that you're dedicated to that. Can you wake up at the same time every single day? Nutritional support, again, it depends on what's going on with brain fog. I don't think I've ever found just one thing that supports it entirely. There are some really great nutraceuticals out there. Again, I would talk to your doctor before you start these because they're not going to be equally safe for everybody and everybody who has different types of medications. But ginkgo biloba, again, check with your doctor. Lion's mane is another one. B6 is another one. B12, vitamin D is another great one for that. B complex in general, looking at your methylation factors. Some people don't methylate very well. And so brain fog is caused because they're not detoxing their environment really well. So there's just a lot of these components that when you ask about like one symptom, there's so many factors that goes into it. And if somebody said brain fog to me, I would never put them on a supplement natural support without finding out what's going on for the brain fog. So.
All right, I want to respect your time. The questions will keep coming, so just tell me when it's time for last question. Because
Yeah, let's do last question for sure.
Okay, well, there's actually two, so okay, let's just do them
We can
both.
do last
All right,
two.
no more questions. Well, one was kind of not specific. It was about if hand swelling and neuropathy could be a symptom of menopause.
That's actually a phenomenal question. So hand swelling, you can, I'm thinking about this because so in menopause, you can have shifts and changes in your electrolyte balance. And so especially in how we regulate sodium, which is one of the reasons also why sometimes it's not just digestive, but we can feel more bloated. So women going through menopause will be like, I just feel different. I feel more bloated. I feel more just like inflamed. And so that is a possibility for sure. While I don't see neuropathy as a rule, I'll look back and I'll get back to Chef AJ, but I don't, it is a possibility that it can be a symptom of menopause. It is not one of the main symptoms that come up, but when I think about neuropathy, I think about inflammation and I think about what's going on if it's not just like a B12 deficiency, which can cause neuropathy, or if it's not like a side effect to chemo or radiation or something like that, then I would say that if it could be due to increase in inflammation, because as we go through perimenopause and menopause, we do find aches and pains, more joint achiness being symptoms because of the increase in inflammation for sure.
Great, thank you. Okay, and guys, if you didn't get your question answered, consider booking a private consultation. The link has been placed in the chat in the show note, or join my Chef AJ community where you can get questions answered always quickly and easily. So the last question is a word I've never heard of, formication. What reduces formication in menopause? I don't even know what formication is, so.
I don't even know if I do, to be honest with you.
Says my friend Susanna texted me, is a tactile hallucination, specifically the sensation of insects crawling on or under the skin when none are present. She's saying it's a menopause symptoms.
I have not seen that in my practice. Generally, I do not see that as a symptom that on average people will report about. I would say this is that if that is coming up, what I would do is definitely talk to your doctor to see if so things I think about when I hear that are, number one is I've definitely heard that more with like Lyme and co-infections. So there might be another factor that is coming into play. The other piece is that there is definitely different sensations that come up because of inflammation in the system. So anything that's going to drop down inflammation can be supportive. And then I would like, so for instance, I mentioned neuropathy. neuropathy is very much first line, a nutritional symptom that can be a nutritional symptom, I should say it that way. So like B12 deficiency. So I would look into your nutritional kind of overview and see if there anything that needs to be supported. So
Great. Well, thank you so much. This was really fun catching up with you.
you too, definitely good questions out there. Awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks to all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ and Friends. Please come back next week on Thursday. We only have one show next week. It's Javant from Healthy Vegan Eating, and he's got a brand new book, Whole Food Plant Based, of course. Take care.